Scott Jensen is a 27-year Marine Corps veteran who has transitioned his leadership experience into roles across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. As founder of Alpine Global Solutions, Scott leverages his experience to provide consulting services, strategic planning, financial management, policy development, and stakeholder engagement. Scott serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, growing the organization from $300,000 to over $4 million while overseeing a 300% growth in programs and services. His highlights include serving as Chief Operations Officer at Team Red, White, and Blue, Chief Executive Officer of Protect Our Defenders, and Assistant Vice President at the American Council on Education. Scott's military career culminated in leading combat units in Iraq and Afghanistan as a helicopter pilot and Chief of Behavioral Programs at Marine Corps Headquarters. He holds degrees from the Naval War College and Marine Corps University, as well as an Executive Nonprofit Management certification from Georgetown University.
Welcome to the Milcom Founders Podcast, where we champion and celebrate military community business founders. In each episode, we will talk with a Milcom business founder to learn how they work through various obstacles and opportunities in business and in life. I'm your host, Brad Loches. Let's meet today's guest. Hey, today on the show, we'd like to welcome Scott Jensen of NVSBC. We're looking forward to having the chance to champion and celebrate him and his organization, and also hopefully talk about his new book, The Owner's Playbook. So welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks, Rod. I appreciate you all having me on, and I appreciate what you all do, too, with using this opportunity to inform. Young guys learn tricks from old guys that maybe mistakes along the way, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. That brings us to a good point, Scott. When you were young, how did you ever, or when, what's the story of your thinking about becoming a Marine? How did that come up?
Yeah, I think, prior to us starting, you pointed out to your grandfather's uniform over your shoulder there. I come from a legacy of military service. My grandfather was World War II in the Army Air Corps before the Air Force existed.
Yeah.
My father was a Vietnam veteran, came back home and jumped back into his service at home as a Forest Service official in the mountains of Idaho. And I just kind of always had an attraction to the military and to the opportunities to serve. I don't know if you'd asked 17-year-old Scott Jensen if he had this motive of service in his head. You know how teenagers are.
Yeah.
But clearly there was something that I had garnered from my parents and my family, as well as those around me, that pushed me towards more of a service-oriented, serve the country expectation and opportunity too. So.
Now, did you go to a little school in Annapolis, or did you?
Yeah, a small trade school over on the Severn River in Maryland. I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1989. And I would also say the legacy has continued because my daughter is a 2015 grad of the Naval Academy and is married to a 2016 grad. So kind of sustaining the tradition, I guess, if you will, of service as well. So both of them they're out now, but they were both pilots in the P-8s in the Navy. So proud of them as well. So
very cool. So when did you join the Naval Academy? Did you already know that you wanted to go the Marine Corps routes, or was this an evolving process?
Great question, Rod. I didn't think I was good enough to be a Marine, and I went into it fully expecting to be Navy. I kind of was interested in aviation, and a little movie you might have heard about called Top Gun came out right in the middle
of fashion
tenure there. So that kind of helped propel that idea of naval aviation I think for all of us, really. It wasn't unique to me, but there was an epiphany probably in my second year there where I started kind of seeing some distinctions of leadership models and everything, taking nothing away from my fellow naval service leaders.
Different time.
But I became more attracted to the Marines. Still was very nervous about whether I could keep up, whether it was right for me. But that's probably at the point where I started making decisions of taking the hard path, not necessarily the easy path, and ultimately started down the path of pursuing a Marine Corps commission and getting commissioned in the Marine Corps. And it wasn't easy. I was in the first class to have to attend Marine Corps Officer Candidate School as part of then Secretary Jim Webb's push to make sure there was excellence coming out of the Naval Academy. And that experiment only lasted a couple of years, by the way.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had to go through that separately, or I would say in addition to your whole training at the Naval Academy. That's
Correct.
pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thankful for it. It really, again, doing hard things helps you solidify in your mind what you want to do and make sure you're making good decisions on it. And it was not easy. And it was not fun, but I am very thankful that I had the experience and got to do that.
Yeah. And then you stayed in and retired as at 06, I think it was. Is that right?
Yeah, I retired as a colonel in 2016. Aviation career. When I was in the operating forces, I was a helicopter pilot, Huey pilot. When I wasn't in the aviation forces, I served some time on the joint staff on the chairman's staff and the J8 resources and strategy alignment, manpower reserve affairs with people management, and retired actually as the head of the behavioral programs for the Marine Corps, leading, a lot of the most challenging topics that we face: sexual assault, drug and alcohol reduction, community counseling, that type of stuff. And I only bring that up because that's really what steered me into the pursuits after I retired, rather than going into corporate or, a large aviation focused contracting company or something like that. I chose a nonprofit veteran serving space because of what I had experienced really with the behavioral programs.
Well, thank you for your service. And it's pretty amazing that your daughter also went to the academy and was a pilot. That's pretty cool tradition and experience to share with with one of your kids. That's pretty amazing. 20 some years in the military, Marines. What are some of those things that you learned about leadership or saw great examples of leadership during that time that you still think about often in the world of business and giving back with NVSBC and other things? What are some of those thoughts that you say other people should hear this story?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, whenever I get the question about great examples, I think you and I both can agree that there were as many bad examples that helped, and I had a mentor that, used to say that don't get mad about the bad examples, learn from them. And I think we do learn more from sometimes the bad example than the good. But, the thing that has always sustained me in service, in uniform in service, and then post in service has always been, a closeness to the people you're working with and that you're serving. And, the Marine Corps does a really good job of leaders eat last concept of putting the people ahead of your own needs and supporting them. And then the other thing that I have found just from a leadership principle that the Marine Corps really emphasizes is the mission type orders, commander's intent, and then let everybody surprise you with how they achieve what they do. The alternative to that is, or the corollary is, don't micromanage, is
Right.
kind of the dumbed down version of that. But the idea that your solutions might not always be the right ones or the best ones, and that if you get the right people around you, you train them properly, and then, wind them up, tell them what you expect of them, and then let them surprise you with the brilliance. I think that's some bastardization of a quote from Patton, right?
Yeah. But it's right. If you give them the intent, make sure they have the right tools. And that was the other thing I always try to make sure I did was the intent, the tools, of course, the attitude, but they've got to bring that out largely. And the roadblocks. And come see me when you have a roadblock, and we'll figure it out so we can continue the mission,
The other thing I've learned over time, and I was blessed in the military. Some wouldn't call this blessing, I guess, but, I commanded in combat at the squadron level, at the group level, at the wing forward level in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And then back home in training and everything. And the one thing I learned from some mentors is that not everything needs to be a panic, and to really know when the critical
Yeah.
items are critical and not to overreact to things. And, and a calm presence, accepting that things are going to go bad, and understanding that the measure of the leader isn't the bad things that happen, but it's the reaction to the bad things that happen, or the challenges. Not everything's bad. There's just challenges. But, when you command 3,500 people, 10 squadrons across multiple states, somebody's going to break an airplane. Somebody's going to crash sometimes. And you try to avoid all that. But if you measure your leadership against those events happening versus how you react to those events,
That's right.
that doesn't help your people at all. And it makes them scared of an overreacting leader. So that calm presence, helping instill calm, confidence, and trust in your people, no matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
and frankly, that's why I see such success in veterans that are running businesses, is because they tend to bring those types of qualities
That's right.
where others may not. So those are critical ideas to me.
Yeah, I had a tech business that we sold in 2010, and I'm still I'm blessed to be great partners or friends with these guys because I went through a business divorce with both of them. I bought them both out. But one of the gentlemen, great guys, and I'm very fortunate to have, they're great friends again today after this business divorce that I went through with them. Yeah, I think that says a lot. But anyways,
Does.
the point being was one of the guys was always full of angst, and he shared that with everyone. And a great guy, smart guy, trustworthy, but it was just this angst, and people would feel it throughout the company. And he grew up later in life, and he doesn't do that anymore because he had kids, I think. But the great equalizer in life is when we have those kids, man. They learn so much. Let's be sure. So, was it at the tail end of your career in the Marines where you started thinking, "Hey, nonprofit might be the way I want to go"? After the Marines, how did that transition uh, come up?
Yeah, it's kind of where I was even leading when you asked about what got me into the
Yeah,
military, because I think we all have different things that drive our core, our inner being, our why. You hear it talked about all the time. And I have since discovered, but I will not claim to have understood it even when I retired, let alone when I was 17 years old, deciding where to go to college and what to do with my life, that a lot of what drives my why is having a mission focused, service oriented attitude towards things. And
it's
so while I didn't really have that nailed down very well in my transition, thankfully, what was driving me internally pushed me towards serving in that nonprofit space.
yeah, it's Scott. You're right. I'm a part of the IVMF. I'm sure you've heard of,
Yeah,
and I'm
we
one of
work with
their
them a lot.
yeah, I know. So I'm one of their ambassadors here for the DC metro area, and so many of the men and women ambassadors, 42 of us this year, um, all have their own nonprofits or contribute to nonprofits because that sense of service is really there. It's absolutely amazing. And from my journey, Scott, 8 or 9 years ago, I was asked to go teach a class in finance to a bunch of veteran founders that were starting their own businesses. Scott, I was 8 years reserve. That was it. Jumped out of planes a few times, silly things like that. But I'd forgot about being a veteran. I just kind of like whatever, it's fun, and just was off the shelf, forgotten about it. But when I was teaching those men and women that class, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm home. This is my tribe. This is my community, my people. And ever since then, it's become a important part of my life again, giving back and pouring into these veteran founders. It's just become what, and why not? 11 out of 13 of my aunts and uncles own their businesses. Both grandparents own their businesses, both in surgeon. you go, well, yeah, you should feel that way, right?
Right.
So, but with your, so you get out of the Marines, you retire as a Marine. How did you say that nonprofit level of service is going to be, what you do going forward? That's still a big full-time commitment today for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to say it was deliberate. I stumbled into it, which is part of the reason I do calls like these and involve myself even in mentoring programs on the side is I could have been a lot more prepared for my transition and understanding what drove me and what I wanted with life. And so on one hand, there was the element of stepping into the nonprofit space and doing hard things in that space. I didn't start with veterans, by the way. I jumped into a higher education organization.
Huh?
Truthfully, on one hand, yeah, you can say, oh, great, Scott jumped into nonprofits. God bless him. He's such a giving guy, all that stuff. The reality is I jumped out and I took a role because of title, salary, reputation, and ego. And while I was in the nonprofit space, I was miserable because I went to the wrong place based on salary, title, ego, all of those things. And it quickly became apparent to me that I had misaligned where I needed to be. There's two sides of that whole story, even. And my point is, as people are transitioning, they really need to take some time, read some books, think about what's driving them and be willing to take a beat, not be worried about
Yeah.
how am I going to pay the bills or, I'm going to feed my family. Those are all things you need to be concerned about. But jumping into the wrong thing can just be as detrimental to you, to your
Big time.
family, to your kids, everything else, even though you've got money flowing. And I was really fortunate. I learned a lot from that role. I learned a lot from that position that to this day I still rely on as an administrator, as an operator, and as an executive of nonprofits. But I probably could have gone easier had I been thinking about what my priorities really should be and what they were and what risks I was willing to take to get aligned with the right mission.
So in doing that and then learning, and you mentioned some books, are there certain books or resources? And we know about TAPS and things, but
Yeah.
what are the resources you think people might benefit from reading, learning, listening to, whatever the
Yeah,
case?
I there's one book that yeah, I should probably get royalties from him but I mean he's a big title, but there's one book that I recommend and have for years because of a mentor after about 2 or 3 years of me being out and in the nonprofit space to help me get aligned. A mentor that I had finally come across had me read it. It's a book called Leading from Purpose by a guy named Nicholas Craig. Craig.
Leading from Purpose. I'm going to write that one
Leading,
down.
yeah, Leading from Purpose. It really, and particularly those who are senior, but it's applicable to anybody else. But it does a number of case studies on executives that were seemingly successful in a large company and then moved up, maybe a subsidiary in a large company that moved up to the next level of leadership and were abject failures. And what was the difference? It seemed like an obvious alignment. It wasn't a Peter principle. So what was the difference? And the emphasis is how they stepped out of their purpose in the one role and stepped into a role that just didn't align with their purpose. And again, it resonated with me just because of my experience stepping out of my role as a Marine colonel, very successful, never had any problems, to all of a sudden questioning whether could ever be successful. I mean, jumping from position to position, not landing where I thought I should be, that type of stuff. And this really helped me orient me in understanding myself.
Yeah.
And understanding what drove me. So to me, I've listened to Leading from Purpose probably 3 or 4 times on Audible. I've read through page over page a couple times, and it's just one of the top. Anybody listen to this that knows me will laugh. There's Scott throwing out Leading from Purpose and Nick Cage, but it's a
Nick Cage. Nick Cage is the
Craig, Nicholas Craig, not Nick
Craig.
Craig. Yeah. Yeah, Craig. I said Cage, but that's, I think, an actor.
Got it. I will be ordering that book by 5 minutes after we're off of here. That's for sure. That's
Great.
cool. I really appreciate that. Mm, I do a lot of I have one on Tuesday with an Air Force person. What do I do when I grow up? What do I do now that I'm not a officer in the Air Force? And that mentoring is just so important. That we do as the old guys give back to
Yeah.
the younger people. That's for sure. It's and helping people find their purpose is just so
Yeah.
it can change everything for them.
Rod, it's so important to me that, I mean, I'll say this right now, anybody who's listening, I'd ask you to get connected with me on LinkedIn, but anybody who's in transition, I am more than willing anytime to spend time with someone who wants to 30, 45-minute discussion on
Yeah.
that purpose,
Thank you.
transition, learn from my mistakes. I'm very committed to that. That's one of the ways I do give back in an informal basis. I'm also part of a couple of mentoring programs out there that are, if there's somebody kind of in mid-career, the Severn Leadership Group out of Annapolis is a great mentoring program. And I'm one of the mentors and senior fellows in that program. My classmate from Navy, she was the president over there and leads that effort, but it's a really good program for anybody,
Yeah. Thank you.
military, non-military. So
Very
another
cool.
resource that's out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Y-
That's great.
You asked me about the resource and the books. And I think one point I got to make too is look for the resources. I think people transitioning and frankly, veterans, particularly early on in the career, we're hesitant to ask for help. We're hesitant to engage and ask people to learn from them. We're hesitant to approach people that we perceive as different from us. And we're also hesitant to approach people out of rank structure, that
Uh-huh.
might be in senior roles in the civilian world. And I encourage everybody to try to put those hesitancies aside and reach out and admit you need help, admit that you don't know it all, be
Yeah.
willing to be vulnerable with people, but ask and reach out to people and talk to people that are not like you, that are in areas that you might think you're interested in. People will answer the phone. People will connect on LinkedIn. They'll let you pick their brain.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you don't wear the uniform anymore, the yes ma'am, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full stuff needs to go away. I laugh and tell the story of my first role. I was an assistant vice president at a very large nonprofit, 100 years old. The the president was 3 doors down from me,
Mhm.
and I wanted everything was yes ma'am and no ma'am, and I fought the urge. And people are like, "You got to call her Molly. You can't call her ma'am. That's just not the culture." And it was a hard lesson for me, but I think it's a lesson we all have to apply.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the role that you have now, and I want to make sure I respect your time, Scott, and I keep it to just another 15, maybe 20
sure,
minutes.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, the role you have now, how did you come about uh, earning that role, that mission, that purpose?
Yeah.
It seems so fit for you as even just talking with you 20, 30 minutes. I'm like, what is she doing? How did that
Yeah.
come?
It's again not by happenstance. I think things happen for a reason, but after a couple of rounds through a couple different nonprofits, I had some mentors and coaches suggest that I open my own company. We're talking about entrepreneurship and my own
Yeah.
consulting firm. And so that I could help multiple organizations at once. And so I founded Alpine Global Solutions, a consulting firm focused on nonprofit organizational management, leadership, strategic organization. Now I do some small business consulting, but I have to be careful about what that entails. I don't typically do that with veterans or veteran GovCons because of conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
But at the time, NVSBC was looking for a new fractional executive director slash CEO. And ironically, 3 different people that were involved in the organization uncollaborated, knew me and knew the work I did. And all 3 of them suggested to the search
Wow.
committee that they should talk to me. They were looking for a nonprofit executive that had their own company and was registered with with Sam, and I fit all those, which the nonprofit executive side of that was a unicorn, and so I started part-time with NVSBC as a consultant. And we had some great success, and we've grown over the last 6.5 years from about a $300,000 organization to a $4 million organization. And,
Okay.
it got to a point where the board came to me and said, we'd like you to consider doing this full time. And so that's why it flipped. I might have one or two clients here or there with Alpine Global Solutions, but my commitment and time and energy
Yeah, it's not
is really
fractional.
focused. No, yeah, it's not fractional, and it takes a lot of time with NVSBC. What's funny about it is I go back again to even my transition. I jumped into nonprofit saying I didn't want to be one of those dirty government contractors.
Uh-huh.
And now here I am leading an organization, and quite frankly, to my surprise, seen as a national leader in federal GovCon, and I love it. And I
Mhm.
love what I do. But if you'd asked me again 10 years ago, I would have fought you probably that I wasn't interested in GovCon. The
Yeah.
difference being is I didn't know anything about the small business government contracting space. I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was this population of veteran-owned companies that I could work with and represent and
Uh,
serve in a different way. And it has. It's fit me like a glove. You just kind of got to follow the path that takes you
yeah.
to where you go. And here we are 6.5 years later, thriving. So,
Yeah, it's funny because I tried to avoid the GovCon space forever, and some of the veteran companies we work with pulled us into it. Or like, "I just have to-" and now it's a sizable part of our business. So it's like, okay, I'm here now, and I need to learn it,
yeah.
and so it's pretty amazing. So, congratulations on the success. I've been to a number of events over the years with NVSPC. But tell me, what are maybe 2 or 3 things that led it to grow by a factor of almost 14 times in the past 7 years? That's incredible growth.
Yeah.
What's the pixie dust? I mean, it was easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, anybody can do it. And honestly, anybody can do it. But it
Mhm.
was, I think fundamentally, we had a good foundation. We had a good mission defined. We haven't moved off of that mission to provide training, engagement, and advocacy for veteran-owned small businesses that support federal agencies.
Uh-huh.
And it's then being able to understand how to meet those objectives, having a strong strategic plan that's executable, being able to operationalize that strategic plan, bring in the tactics to make it operational, be willing to look around curves that nobody else is looking at, and having a confidence that you're going to get there no matter what.
Yeah.
And then just being dogged in pursuing and being creative in looking for the resources to be able to accomplish that. And then bringing in the right people that can sustain a culture that is going to be appealing to your constituents, is going to be appealing to your staff and the people that
Yeah.
work there. And I say all that because guess what am I describing, Rod? I'm describing about every veteran that's out there.
That's
An
right.
understanding of a strategy, how to implement an operational plan, how to implement the tactics to do that, how to empower the right people, establish a good culture.
Culture.
One of my tenets is take care of the little things, the big things will take care of themselves. And,
Mhm.
and once in a while, you do have to pick your head up and go, oh my gosh, I guess we're doing okay.
Yeah.
You surprise yourself sometimes with,
So think about, or if you could share with the community 1 or 2 success stories that you've helped, that NVSBC has helped in the past 6.5 years, that are just shining stars of what NVSBC can do for organizations. I'm sure you're probably going, okay, there's 15, 20 for that. But give me 1
yeah,
or 2 of those stories. I think it'd be very helpful for people to
yeah,
understand this.
I, on one hand, there are a number of companies that were just getting started and trying to get started, and they didn't know the way to go about doing it. They were being incredibly inefficient. I've got a couple of folks that that we're very personal in how we interact with people, and we take people by the hand and we point them in the right direction and connect them with trusted people. So two people come to my mind. I won't say their names. They were either just in transition or were really trying to get companies off the ground. And they started attending our Washington, D.C. monthly dinners. You know how it is. You can attend a dinner all day long, but if you don't meet the right people in those dinners and have those connections, and I'm really proud that we were able to take them by the hand, almost literally, and walk them up to another successful, well-established, veteran-owned small business and say, you guys should talk.
Yeah.
Knowing that senior, more established company is going to take that person by the hand and help mentor and bring them across the line. And now that young company is no longer young. They've got their contracts lined up. They're working, but it's all because of another veteran that was willing to help them along the way and help feed a contract in a way. I like to say I love working in the veteran community because it's one of the few small business communities that's willing to create their own competition, right? Nobody else is willing. You see that so rarely. Another example is a company that's been working with us a lot. They're pretty well established, but they came to our conference, I think 3 years ago now in Orlando, and they had a new product, a robot that was designed for surgical robotics, but it hadn't gotten traction yet. And they saw a contracting officer from the VA on the floor at our conference, and they said, hey, do you know you have a problem that you don't know about? And they're like, tell me. And they sat down and explained what they had as a solution, what the problem was that the VA had.
Oh, wow.
And within a month, they had a sole source award contract with the VA under an SDVOSB sole source, which is another unicorn that people just don't typically see. A year later, they were able to grab that same contracting officer, bring her to the exhibit floor, and show her the robot that she had purchased. And, and it's that kind of bringing the right people into the right rooms with the right motivations to solve problems for the federal government that I'm really proud that we create those environments where a company is ready to do it. They're put in front of the right people, and it leads to better business for them, but it also leads to a mission resolution for our federal government. Gives those veterans the opportunity to serve just in a different way out of uniform.
Yeah.
And those are just two examples.
Yeah. And, Scott, I've been to some of the meetings, and I just joined NVSBC, and the dinners are great. They're fantastic. Amazing venue at the Army Navy Club. It's fantastic. But the difference is it's made, the dinners are great, but I need to figure out how am I going to dig in and contribute and give to the community. And that's when the magic happens.
100%.
Just being on the top is don't even show up, right?
Yeah.
But if you dig in, that's when the magic happens, and you get to know the people and the missions and how to contribute to them. That does bring me to a question. You talked about the mentoring. Mentoring can be so powerful, and I'll call them business buddies. Do you guys have a program that helps identify who your mentor might be, or who might be a mentor for a year or something like that?
Multiple. We obviously have the informal. You come to any event that we host, a dinner or whatever, or you just engage with us and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody. We'll try to connect you, whether it's a form. But from a formal aspect, we have a very deliberate fellows program that we're actually just getting ready to announce our next 9-month cohort of fellows that has been very successful in connecting developing companies in their industry with mentors, with fellows, with our senior fellow cohorts, and that type of stuff. So that's when now you obviously need to apply. You need to get accepted. Anybody watching this, it's too late for this year, but next year, keep an eye on it. So that's one. And frankly, we've gotten a lot of response. I'm excited. It looks like even the Small Business Administration is imminently close to investing in supporting that. We have
Awesome.
support from Navy Federal Credit Union, and Boeing has invested in it. So they see real value in
Yeah.
helping those fellows through the program. We also have a consulting program that anybody in the world can just pick up or go to our website, register for a consultation, and we can help them and connect them through referrals to a resource network of over 250 subject matter experts across a full body of knowledge from entry to exit on connecting with the right people to help them. And
Mhm.
so those are a couple of different formal
Yeah.
entryways allow them, and they're free. You know, and the other thing Rod, that's important about NVSBC is two things. We focus not just on entry level, but entry all the way to exit, growth to the more senior companies that are looking at expanding into IDIQs or more sophisticated challenges that they
Mhm.
might face. The other thing is we serve everybody in the company. So many programs are only for the CEO or the inform. And you and I both know that I've just got all kinds of time in the world as a CEO or an owner to take all of this training and have to go back to my company and inculcate that down, right? That's what we
Yeah.
learned is in the military careers,
Yeah.
right? Is it the only no, everybody contributes to the company.
Right.
And so anybody in the company is eligible to call in and participate with us as from the
That
consultation to,
that's amazing.
attending our events. And we even have a virtual training platform on our YouTube channel that has hundreds of hours of content. And what we find is it's become part of the onboarding process for many of our member companies and non-member companies. Anybody can access it. So you bring in a
Yeah.
new business developer, they're getting assignments to
Uh,
go to our available resources and get up to speed so that they can be effective in the company.
yeah.
So
No, that
that's
is
the
good.
needs that we
Yeah,
bring.
because how can the CEO uh, I have 15 people in my company, and for me to try to allegedly learn everything and did that, no way. I can't even try. I can't even try. It's got to be the specialist and the leads, and they've got to learn and sharpen their swords, and
Right.
figure things out. Absolutely. Scott, you wrote a book. What?
Yeah.
Just I think you published it in December. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess December sounds about right. I've kind of lost track of exactly when
How
it
how do
came
you
out.
how did that come
It's
about?
well, you know, y- you're kind of in the space. You're mentoring. A lot of people say, "Hey, you should write a book," but and pass on your lessons. And the challenge of writing a book is you can't get everything in your head. You have to discipline what you're going to write in this book. I guess that's why people write multiple books because you
Yeah,
can't get it all in one.
good point.
And so this was just kind of a first entry for me, Rod, in starting to pass along the tools that I have found useful. So, it's called the Owner's Playbook. It's designed intentionally to be pick a chapter that applies to you
Mm.
and apply the lessons and use the tools in any one chapter. It's not a read it from beginning to end, and you certainly can do that, but it was more designed to say, here are, 12, 13 different lessons across what
Yeah.
I've seen in my experience as a leader, as a business leader, as what I'm seeing when I interact with other business leaders about how to organize yourself, how to
Mhm.
think, how to market, how to tell your story, those types of things. And in some regards, it's almost whack-a-mole. I
Uh-huh.
try to be consistent, but it wasn't designed to be, like I said, a 13 lessons that build up to some grand adoption. It was there to be, hey, if chapter one doesn't apply, skip it.
Yeah,
Chapter
got it.
three is what you need, then read chapter three,
Uh-huh.
type of a book. So
That's fantastic.
I hope people find it useful. Frankly, it's somewhat embarrassing to talk about a book you write. It's just not my style, but I do hope it. I think that's another lesson for all of us too. Is I got so much feedback from the people I work with that you should tell your story. Is we just tend to think of it as, hey, that's just how everybody thinks. That's how you do business. There's nothing special about me. And the
Right.
reality is there's something special about all of us.
Yeah.
There's
That's right.
something someone can learn from all of us. And you have to kind of put your humility aside sometimes and be willing to accept that and offer that out to the rest of the community. And
That's
that's
right.
what I attempted to do.
To be vulnerable, basically, you're putting your word out there. Like even when I started the podcast, hey, Natalie was trying to get me to start this podcast for 18 months. Yeah. And then I was so self-conscious about doing it.
Mhm.
And today we're doing Scott, full disclosure, I'm doing this call without my notes at all because uh, I came flying in here from another meeting. I was like, oh, shit. And but I appreciate your graciousness. It's been a great conversation. Let me, as we wrap up here, Scott, what's a question I haven't asked you yet? You're like, why hasn't Rod asked me this yet? What's something I should know about NVSBC or Scott or what, something that'll help the community? And not that I should know, that the community should hear.
I think I would let me flip the script on the last thing is what's the last piece of wisdom I would offer to anybody listening to this, assuming they're thinking entrepreneurial, they're thinking they're veteran likely, or they're in transition. And I would say that if there's one thing that I would close with is anyone contemplating their next steps, if you wore the uniform and whether it was for 4 years or 40 years, whether you went to the Naval Academy or Stanford or Harvard, or whether you didn't, you are armed with what you need to be successful, particularly in the entrepreneurial space. And it's hard to accept that because that's not what the military prepares us for. But you come with resiliency, education, smarts, and innovation in ways, going back to what we were just talking about, that you just don't give yourself credit for, that make you incredibly unique. And have confidence that you're coming with a backlog of capability that can make you successful in anything you do, particularly in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And the military bearing, stay calm, keep
Yeah.
your composure, and let things slow down to come to you, and then don't react but act. And you mentioned earlier, it made me think of this saying that I have, and that is, stuff is going to happen to us, or we could say it a different way. And for me, what I always try to remember, Scott, is how long will I take and look at life through the lens of grievance when that stuff happens to me, before I get back to the lens of gratitude. And that lens of gratitude is what allows us to continue to grow, to love, to serve, to share. And we will all have that lens of grievance on, but how fast can we get back to the lens of gratitude?
Yeah. Boy, I couldn't say it any better. Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, we want to thank you for being on the podcast today. And part of that's going to be, we're going to make $100 donation to the Dick Loges Scholarship Fund. And that goes to kids of military families. We gave out 2 this year, 2 wonderful young ladies. Their stories are just absolutely amazing. We're very blessed to hopefully we'll do 3 this year. But you're part of their journey. And
wonderful. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on the Milcom Founders Podcast. If you know a Milcom founder with a story to share, reach out to us at milcomfounders.com. For each guest on our show, Undegree Financial donates $100 to the Dick Loges Veteran Entrepreneur Scholarship Fund, supporting education for children of the Milcom Business Center. Stay ready.